So let me get this straight. You're looking for an entry-level budget camera that can shoot high-quality video, similar to the high-end cameras that the pros use? Well, you came to the right video, because 2 years ago when I first started this channel, I was pretty much exactly in your shoes. Well, maybe not exactly in your shoes. I mean, I'd assume your shoes are probably better than mine were, but you get the picture, right? So fast forward about 2 years and I can confidently say that any of the cameras that I'll be talking about today can give you exactly what you're looking for, even though some of them are priced at only about $600. Because in reality, getting that beautiful cinematic footage isn't only about the camera and the lens that you use, but it's mostly about your skills. But don't worry, because after you decide which camera you're gonna buy, you can check out the rest of my channel to learn most of the skills that you're gonna need. And just in case any newer or better cameras come out after I publish this video, I'll make sure to add them to the links in the description below. So coming in at number 5, we got the Fujifilm X-S10, which happens to be the most expensive camera on our list, priced just under $1,000. The X-S10 has a 26 megapixel APS-C sensor. It can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second and can shoot up to 240 frames per second in 1080 for that super duper slow motion footage. It has a flippy screen, so it's great for content creators and vloggers. And the fact that it comes with an EVF is a big plus, because you don't have to worry about screen visibility in bright sunlight. The X-S10 comes with in-body image stabilization, and although it's not the most effective IBIS for video, it does help out a lot when taking photos. But personally, I wouldn't recommend this camera for most people, because you're going to get a lot more for your money with the rest of the cameras I'm going to tell you about. That being said, Fuji does have very special color science, and if you're a person that appreciates those Fuji film simulation modes, then this camera may be a great entry into the Fuji ecosystem. But keep in mind that there is a 30-minute record limit on this camera, and the autofocus isn't as good as Canon or Sony. And when shooting 4K in a hot environment, the camera may overheat every now and then. Next, we have the Canon M50 Mark II. And yeah, I know, this camera came out over 5 years ago, but it's an oldie but goodie. I started this channel with the Canon M50 and wouldn't hesitate to recommend it for anyone that has a super tight budget. You could pick one up brand new for only about $500 to $600 with the 15 to 45 millimeter kit lens. But no doubt, this camera does have its compromises. Firstly, even though Canon cameras have some of the best autofocus in the game, the M50 loses its autofocus when shooting at 4K. So if you get this camera, you pretty much have to consider it strictly a 1080 camera. The 24 megapixel APS-C sensor gives you up to 60 frames per second in 1080, so you can get some decent slow-mo out of it. Canon is well known for its ease of use and its amazing colors, so the footage and the photos this camera produces are indeed beautiful. It has both a flippy screen and an EVF and feels very comfortable in your hands, even though it's a small camera. And similar to the Fuji X-S10, it does have a 30-minute record limit, but doesn't have any overheating issues. Now, as much as I love this camera, I have to say, there are much better options out there which cost just slightly more. So the M50 is no longer the best bang for your buck camera that it once was. But here's the thing, if you can find a clean used copy, or if you can find it on sale, then you might be able to pick up a deal that'll be hard to resist. Coming in at number 3, we got the Nikon Z30. The Z30 has a 21 megapixel APS-C sensor. Considering that you can get this camera with the kit lens for only about $700 brand new, it's a very compelling option. It shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second and gives you 120 frames per second in 1080. It has a fully articulating flippy screen, so it's great for content creators and vloggers. But unfortunately, it doesn't have an EVF, so if you're into stills, it may not be the best choice. But when it comes to video, all the footage I've seen coming off of this sensor has been very solid. Considering that the record limit on the Nikon Z30 is 125 minutes, it's great if you shoot a lot of interviews, podcasts, or anything else that requires long takes. It has been known to overheat in 4K in warm environments, so keep that in mind. Nikon doesn't give you its log profile with this camera, but it does give you a flat color profile, which will help you out when color grading or when adding your favorite LUTs. And if you're not familiar with what a LUT is, it stands for lookup table. Think of it as a preset that you can apply to your footage that's going to give you a cinematic look without you having to spend hours on color grading. The footage you're looking at right now is how it looks straight out of camera, and this is with my teal and orange juice LUT applied. And this is with my analog days LUT. So you can really make your footage and your photos pop regardless of which camera brand you use to shoot them. So make sure to check out my Filmic LUT pack and Lightroom profiles available on my website. And that brings us to the number 2 camera on my list, which is none other than the Sony ZV-E10. This camera packs a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which gives you crisp 4K footage, oversampled from 6K. It gives you 4K up to 30 frames per second and 1080 up to 120 frames per second for some pretty nice slow motion. Personally, I haven't been the biggest fan of Sony cameras, but I can't lie, this is one of the most capable cameras in the sub 1000 price range. Now I can't go into all the reasons why this camera is so good, but I'll give you a few. First things first, the autofocus is top notch. Next, it's one of the only cameras that offers a true log profile in this price range. And although you won't be using that much with these entry-level 8-bit cameras, it's still a nice option to have. It has a flippy screen, which is great, but similar to the Z30, it doesn't have an EVF. Sony has the best mirrorless lens lineup currently available. This is a big strength, because your final look isn't going to just be determined by your camera, but also your lens. It doesn't have a record limit either, and isn't known to overheat. So if long takes are important, I'd go with this over any of the other cameras on this list. And considering that you can buy the Sony ZV-E10 for about 800 bucks, including the kit lens, man, it's a hard deal to beat. There has been rumors of a ZV-E10 Mark II coming out soon, so make sure to check the links in the description below, because I'll add it there if the rumors end up being true. And that brings us to the number 1 entry-level affordable camera for videography and filmmaking. If you've been following my channel, you know that even though I switched to Lumix recently, I still love Canon cameras, and I still own a few. I think Canon makes some of the best cameras out there, especially for beginners, because they're the easiest cameras to learn on. So the number 1 pick, as far as I'm concerned, has to be the Canon EOS R50. The R50 is like the new, updated and improved version of the Canon M50. And you know how much I love that little beast. The R50 comes in at about 800 bucks, including the kit lens, and has a few features that really punch beyond this price point. For starters, the 24 megapixel APS-C sensor gives you 4K footage oversampled from 6K. It can shoot up to 30 frames per second in 4K and up to 120 frames per second in 1080 for buttery smooth slow-mo. Canon has included its new autofocusing system, which gives you human, animal, vehicle, and product autofocus. The R50 has a flippy screen and the EVF. Canon recently announced that they've allowed Sigma to make lenses for the RF mount, so it looks like they reversed their short-sighted decision to ban third-party lens manufacturers. So there should be plenty of affordable lenses coming in the near future, which is great news. I have to say that it's a close call between the R50 and the Sony ZV-E10, but I think that the R50 comes out ahead for a few reasons. Firstly, the digital stabilization in the R50 is very good and only applies a 10% crop, whereas the Sony applies a 40% crop, which makes it harder to use for vlogging or wide shots. Second, I really prefer the colors coming out of Canon cameras, especially when it comes to skin tones. And third, the ergonomics, the ease of use, and simple menus make this the best fit for beginners. But the one thing that may be a deal breaker for some is that the R50 has a 1-hour record limit, and when shooting in the highest quality 4K, the camera overheats at around the 40-minute mark. So to sum it up, if you need to do long uninterrupted takes, go with the ZV-E10. But if you don't do long takes and you want an easy to use camera that's going to give you beautiful results without much effort, then go for the R50. Now, if you've gained any value from this video, I'd appreciate it if you use the links below to purchase your new camera. Now, keep in mind that all the cameras on this list were crop sensor APS-C cameras. And if you could stretch your budget to about 1,500 bucks, you could go with a full frame camera instead. And if you're not clear as to what are the differences between APS-C and full frame, then I highly suggest you watch this video next where I explain the differences in simple language. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content. If you have any questions, just leave them for me below. I appreciate you watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. It's Fulan Creative, and I'm out. Peace.